My name is Pamela Torres, and 3 days after I lost my job, my wealthy husband slid a legal document across our marble dining table and said, "From now on, we split everything 50-50. I'll only care for myself." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just looked at him with calm eyes and said, "All right." He had no idea what I was about to do. "Sign here," Cole said, uncapping his Mont Blanc pen, the one I'd given him for our 5th anniversary. I had my lawyer draw it up this morning. I stared at the paper titled Domestic Financial Restructuring Agreement while my coffee grew cold in my hands. 3 days? I'd been unemployed for exactly 3 days, and my husband of 8 years had already consulted a lawyer about dividing our life into itemized columns. Before we go deeper, if you believe marriage should be a partnership, not a business transaction, please consider subscribing. It helps more women find these important stories. Now, let's see what Cole's 50-50 arrangement really meant. The morning light streaming through our penthouse windows caught the gold trim of that pen. The same light that used to make our Saturday mornings feel sacred. For 8 years, this had been our ritual. Me cooking eggs Benedict from scratch while Cole read the Financial Times, occasionally sharing merger news from his hedge fund world. The hollandaise sauce I'd perfected. The precise temperature of his coffee. The way I'd arrange fresh flowers on the table. All of it had felt like love. Now it felt like unpaid labor he was itemizing. My story begins long before that contract, though. I came to America from Spain at 23 with 2 suitcases and a scholarship to Northwestern. My parents owned a small cafe in Barcelona, hard-working people who taught me that dignity came from honest work, not inherited wealth. I met Cole Ashton when I was 27, working 80-hour weeks to make senior analyst at Hartman Capital. He was 32, already managing his father's hedge fund clients, wearing confidence like a second skin. At a charity gala, he'd approached me by the champagne fountain. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he'd said. "I'd rather be working," I'd replied honestly. He'd laughed, a real laugh, not the practiced chuckle I'd later learn he used with clients. Finally, someone who understands that time is money. We dated for 18 months. He introduced me to his world of private clubs and ski chalets, of knowing which fork to use at 12-course dinners. I introduced him to passion, to someone who saw him as Cole, not just as William Ashton's heir. His mother, Victoria, had reservations from the start. Old money always does when new blood enters the family. But she was too polite to say it directly. Instead, she'd correct my pronunciation of French wines, suggest I might want to soften my ambition, ask when I planned to settle into domesticity. His father, William, had died 2 years before we met, at his desk at 58, leaving Cole millions and a pathological need to prove his worth through net worth. My father always said dependency breeds weakness, Cole would say, as if this justified every cold calculation. We married in a ceremony that cost more than my parents' cafe made in 5 years. Victoria had opinions about everything, the flowers, the venue, even my dress. "Perhaps something more traditional, dear," she'd suggested when I'd shown her the sleek Vera Wang I'd chosen. I'd change the dress. That should have been my first warning. The early years were good, or so I thought. I made partner at Hartman by 32. Cole's fund grew by 40%. We bought the penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, $2 million of marble, glass, and carefully curated art that looked expensive because it was. But slowly, subtly, things shifted. My investment strategies would become Cole's insights, in his client presentations. My professional network would transform into Cole's connections. At dinner parties, he'd interrupt my explanations with, "That's not quite how mergers work, darling," in front of his Princeton friends. I'd laugh it off. Marriage is compromise, right? "You had your lawyer draw this up," I repeated slowly, flipping through pages of subsections and clauses, "without discussing it with me first?" "I wanted to have a framework ready," Cole said, adjusting his Princeton class ring, a nervous tell I'd noticed during our first date. "More efficient this way." Efficient. Everything in Cole's world came down to efficiency and optimization. It made him brilliant at managing hedge funds and terrible at understanding why I was staring at him like he'd grown a second head. The document was thorough. I gave him that. Rent division, utility allocations, grocery expenditures, even a formula for calculating shared space usage fees. My husband had turned our marriage into a spreadsheet while I was still processing my layoff from Hartman Capital. Monday morning had started normally enough. I'd kissed Cole goodbye, driven to the office, grabbed my usual vanilla latte from the cart outside the building. By noon, I was sitting in Margaret's corner office while she explained that market conditions required strategic restructuring. We both knew the truth. The new CEO wanted his nephew in a senior position, and I was the casualty of nepotism dressed up as fiscal responsibility. "I need some time with this," I'd said, staring at Cole's contract. "This is a significant change." "When did you decide this?" I asked. "It's been on my mind for a while," he said, finally looking up from his phone. "Your job loss just clarified things." I thought about Tuesday evening when I'd finally told Cole about the layoff. He'd been in his home office, 3 monitors glowing with market data. I'd stood in the doorway like a stranger in my own home. "I lost my job," I'd said. His fingers had paused on the keyboard for exactly 2 seconds before resuming their clicking. "When?" "Yesterday. They gave me 2 weeks severance." That's when he'd turned around, his expression unreadable. "Don't worry, we'll figure something out." But even as he'd said it, I'd watched him pull up our joint account on his center monitor, calculating how long my final paycheck would last. Now, 3 days later, he was presenting me with a contract that reduced our 8-year marriage to line items and subclauses. "What about Thursday?" I asked. "At Chateau Laurent, when you said we were partners?" Thursday's dinner had been his idea. "A chance to strategize," he'd said. I'd worn the black dress he loved, the one that made me feel powerful even when my professional world was crumbling. He'd ordered a bottle of Krug without asking what I wanted, the first time in 8 years he hadn't asked my preference. Over amuse-bouche, while other couples held hands across candlelit tables, Cole had launched into a presentation about restructuring our domestic arrangement for maximum efficiency. His business speak for destroying everything we'd built. "We are partners," he said now, tapping the contract. "Equal partners. That's what this ensures." I looked at my husband, really looked at him. His perfectly styled hair. His Tom Ford suit even though it was Saturday. His expression of mild impatience, like I was a difficult client refusing to see reason. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this person, and I'd just been too in love to notice? "You know," I said quietly, "I specialized in forensic accounting at Hartman." Something flickered across his face. Concern? Fear? But he recovered quickly. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Just remembering my skill set," I said, picking up the pen, his pen, my gift to him when we still gave each other presents that meant something beyond their price tags. Since I'm about to be self-sufficient, I signed the contract with a flourish that would have made him proud if he'd been paying attention to anything beyond his victory. Pamela Torres, in perfect cursive. The last time I'd ever signed that name. There, I said, sliding it back across the marble we'd chosen together in Italy on our honeymoon, giddy with love and possibility. Equal partners. Cole smiled, satisfied, already turning back to his phone. He didn't notice me taking photos of every page with my cell. He didn't notice me mentally cataloging every asset, every account, every carefully hidden financial transaction I'd pretended not to know about. He definitely didn't notice me texting my sister, Emma. You were right. It's happening. Because while Cole thought he was restructuring our marriage, what he'd actually done was declare war. And he'd just handed me the blueprint for exactly how to win it. Emma's text came back immediately, finally showing his true colors. Document everything. My sister had never trusted Cole. Not since the day she'd met him at our engagement party, when he'd corrected her pronunciation of Moet in front of everyone. Emma taught 3rd grade in Milwaukee, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and had better instincts about people than anyone I knew. I tucked my phone away as sleep became impossible. My mind kept replaying the signature, the contract, the cold calculation in Cole's eyes. At 5 a.m., I gave up pretending and slipped out of bed. Cole's side was already empty, sheets barely disturbed. Through the closed door of his home office, I could hear his voice, smooth and confident, talking to Singapore about profit margins and market volatility. Saturday morning, and he was already 3 hours into his workday. I padded to the kitchen, needing caffeine to process what my life had become. Cole's laptop sat open on the counter. He must have been working there before his call. The screen was still lit. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I wasn't ashamed either. The spreadsheet was titled Household Reorganization Post JL. My unemployment had been reduced to initials. The Jade layoff, like I was a line item in his quarterly reports. The columns were meticulous. Pre-JL monthly contribution showed my salary, our joint expenses, what percentage I'd covered. Post-JL sustainability model calculated exactly how much of a financial drain I'd become. He'd even created projections for different scenarios. If I found work in 3 months, 6 months, a year. The final column made my stomach turn. Optimal resolution timeline. He was calculating how long before he could justify leaving me. I took photos of every worksheet, every calculation, every cold assessment of my worth. Then I noticed another tab. MGM Consulting. Monthly transfers of $3,000, going back 6 months. Madison Grace Mitchell, his 28-year-old executive assistant. The woman who texted him about urgent presentations at 11 at night. The conference call droned on through the door. Cole laughed at something, that practiced chuckle he used with clients. I closed his laptop and went to work. By the time he left for golf at 9, his Saturday morning tradition with Marcus Fitzgerald and 2 other Princeton buddies, I'd transformed our dining room into Command Central. Office Max had opened at 8, and I'd been their first customer, loading up on laminating sheets, color-coded folders, and enough supplies to rival a law firm. Going to the club, Cole had said, grabbing his golf bag. He'd paused at the door, watching me arrange my supplies. What's all this? Organizing, I'd replied, not looking up. Being self-sufficient. He'd laughed, actually laughed, and left. The moment his Tesla pulled out of the garage, I got serious. 8 years of marriage meant 8 years of financial documents, tax returns, investment statements, credit card bills. Cole thought he was clever with his hidden assets, but forensic accounting had been my specialty. Finding money was what I did. I created my own masterpiece, a 47-page document titled Marital Asset Utilization Framework. If Cole wanted to run our marriage like a business, I'd give him the full corporate treatment. Section 1. Historical labor analysis. Every dinner party I'd hosted for his clients. Every weekend I'd spent charming investors at tedious golf tournaments. Every thank you note I'd written. Every gift I'd selected for his business associates. Every hour I'd spent making him look like a functional human being instead of the emotional void he actually was. I calculated it all at market rates. Event planning, $200 per hour. Executive assistant services, $75 per hour. Social coordination, $150 per hour. Section 2. Intellectual property contributions. The investment strategies I'd suggested that he'd presented as his own. The connections from my Hartman network that had become his clients. The market insights I'd shared over breakfast that had mysteriously appeared in his presentations. Section 3. Opportunity cost analysis. The promotions I'd passed up to accommodate his career. The networking events I'd skipped to host his mother. The professional development I'd sacrificed to maintain his illusion of domestic perfection. By the time Cole's Tesla hummed back into the garage at 1, I'd bound everything in a leather portfolio that looked more expensive than it was. I heard him enter, the sound of his golf shoes on marble, the refrigerator opening. "Pamela," he called. "Why is there a lock on your shelf?" I didn't answer. Let him wonder. He found me in the dining room, still in his golf attire, those ridiculous plaid pants his Princeton friends convinced him looked good. His face was flushed from sun and probably a few beers at the 19th hole. "What is all this?" He gestured at my war room setup. "Your copy," I said, sliding the leather portfolio across the table with the same precision he'd used that morning. "Of our updated arrangement?" He smirked, that patronizing expression I'd once found charming. "Pamela, come on." Sevens. Page 12. I interrupted. "Start with section 3. 2. Still smiling, he opened the document. I watched his face change as he read. Retroactive compensation for unrecognized labor contributions, 2016 to 2024. "This is," he started. "Thorough," I supplied. "Keep reading." His smile died completely at the total. $347,000 in uncompensated labor, calculated at market rates for comparable services, executive assistant, event planner, social coordinator, investment consultant. "You can't be serious," he said. Page 36. Precedent cases for retroactive compensation in dissolved business partnerships. His phone rang. Marcus Fitzgerald, calling to thank him for covering the drinks. Cole's hand shook slightly as he answered. "Marcus, I need you to look at something. Legal opinion. Can I put you on speaker?" Marcus's voice filled the room, still jovial from morning drinks. "Sure, buddy. What's up?" "Pamela created some kind of document about our household arrangement." "Send it over," Marcus said, his voice shifting to professional mode. I watched Cole photograph pages, his jaw tightening with each image. We waited in silence for Marcus to review them, the only sound the tick of the grandfather clock Cole's mother had given us as a wedding present. Finally, Marcus spoke, and he wasn't laughing anymore. Cole, is this real? She signed my agreement this morning, so she created this. Sevens. No, I mean, are these numbers real? Did she really handle all this? Cole's silence was answer enough. Marcus whistled low. Legally, she's got you by the balls. Buddy, you wanted a business arrangement. She gave you one. And honestly, based on what I'm seeing here, she's undervaluing her contributions. You're supposed to be my friend, Cole snapped. I am your friend, which is why I'm telling you the truth. Either tear up both agreements and go back to being married, or prepare to write a very large check. Cole hung up without saying goodbye. We stood there, facing each other across the table where we'd once shared romantic dinners, where we'd planned our future, where this morning he'd dismantled our marriage with a pen stroke. This is blackmail, he said finally. This is mathematics, I replied, echoing his words from that morning. Your idea, just properly implemented. Cole stood there for another moment, his hand gripping the portfolio so tightly the leather creaked. Then he turned and walked out, leaving my document on the table like evidence at a crime scene. I heard his office door slam, the lock clicking into place. That night, I barely slept. Not because of guilt, I was past that, but because I was planning. Cole thought he was the strategic one, the chess player, the one who saw 3 moves ahead. He didn't realize I'd been watching him play for 8 years, learning every gambit, every tell, every weakness. At 3 a.m., I crept to the living room with my laptop. Our smart home system was Cole's pride and joy, a $50,000 investment in automated everything. The future of living, he'd called it, spending weeks programming routines and zones. Now it would be the battlefield. The master control app was still logged into my phone. Cole had never thought to revoke my administrative access. Why would he? I'd never shown interest in his technical toys before. It took me 3 hours and several YouTube tutorials, but by dawn, I'd reprogrammed everything. Pamela Zone and Cole Zone were born. My zones ran on new passwords, biometric locks that only recognized my face and fingerprints. His zones kept his original access, but with some creative restrictions I'd built in. The beauty was in the overlap areas, the spaces we supposedly shared equally. Those would require both our authorizations to function. I was back in bed, feigning sleep, when Cole's alarm went off at 6 a.m. I heard him pad to the bathroom, yawning. Then silence. Then a muttered curse. The shower wouldn't start. Isn't his problem, I thought. Pamela, he called. Something's wrong with the shower. I stretched lazily. Mine works fine. Try resetting your access code. More cursing. The sound of him jabbing at the control panel. Finally, the shower started, but only cold water. I'd restricted his hot water heater access to economy mode between 6 and 7 a.m. Energy efficiency, after all. By the time he made it to the kitchen, still shivering, I was already there with my coffee, reading news on my tablet. The coffee maker won't connect, he said, staring at the machine like it had betrayed him. That's in my zone now, I explained. Would you like to purchase a cup? I'm offering a special rate, only $8 for premium brew. His face went red. This is ridiculous. This is the 50-50 arrangement you wanted. Equal division of assets. I took a long, satisfied sip of my coffee. Your coffee maker is in your office. He stormed to his office, and I heard the cheap Mr. Coffee machine I'd bought him gurgling to life. $20 at Target. It seemed appropriate. Saturday arrived with Emma's visit. My sister had driven down from Milwaukee in her 10-year-old Honda, parking it next to Cole's Tesla in our garage. The contrast was perfect. Everything about our situation summarized in two vehicles. Holy! Emma stopped mid-word as she entered our penthouse. The living room was bathed in two distinct lighting schemes. My side glowed with warm amber tones from the smart bulbs. Cole's side was lit in cold corporate blue. A clear line divided the space where our zones met. "Pamela, what have you done?" "Implemented Cole's vision," I said, hugging her. "Come on, let me show you my side." Emma followed me through the apartment, her teacher's salary sensibilities visibly offended by every surface. When we reached the kitchen, she saw the digital locks on the refrigerator sections. "You're joking," she said. "He ate my meal prep at 2 a.m. Wednesday night. $60 worth of organic ingredients gone?" I showed her the security footage on my phone. Cole, in his boxers, illuminated by refrigerator light, eating my carefully portioned containers. "This isn't healthy," Emma whispered. But then I showed her my bank statements. The joint account Cole had drained to protect assets. My severance that had mysteriously needed to cover unexpected household expenses. The credit card he'd canceled without warning. "Oh, honey," she said, understanding dawning. "He's trying to force you out." "He's trying to break me," I corrected. But he forgot I learned from the best. Sunday morning, I decided to document Cole's self-sufficiency journey. He'd announced he was going grocery shopping, a first in our 8-year marriage. I waited 10 minutes, then followed. Whole Foods on a Sunday was packed. Perfect cover. I kept my distance, phone discreetly recording as Cole wandered the produce section like a lost tourist in a foreign country. He stood in front of the cherry display for 5 full minutes, holding a small box marked $27. "Excuse me?" he asked a teenage employee stocking apples. "Is this the normal price for cherries?" The kid looked at the box, then at Cole in his $1,000 sneakers. "It's organic, sir, and imported." "But $27? You could try regular cherries," the employee suggested. "They're 8. Cole put the expensive box in his cart anyway. Image over economics, even now. The meat counter was worse. He ordered 8 pounds of Wagyu beef, not understanding the price was per pound, not total. The butcher's eyebrows rose, but he wrapped it anyway. Cole added truffle salt, $45, aged balsamic, $62, and something called heritage grains, $30, that I guarantee he couldn't define. His total came to $438, $67, for one person, for 1 week. I was already home when he returned, struggling with his bags. "Need help?" I offered sweetly. "I've got it," he grunted, dragging premium groceries to his side of the kitchen. Everything went into his designated areas, including the freezer section I'd marked with digital tape. Monday morning was beautiful. Cole had an 8 a.m. breakfast meeting with Japanese investors, crucial for his fund's expansion. He woke at 6, showered, still cold, and went to make breakfast. I watched from my laptop's camera as he opened his refrigerator section. The Wagyu was there, raw and expensive. The heritage grains sat unopened. The truffle salt looked decorative on his shelf. He tried every password combination on my locked section, where my prepped breakfast sandwiches waited. Pamela 1234. Anniversary 2016. Even I love you, which made me laugh bitterly. Finally, at 7:47. He placed an order for delivery. $85 for eggs, toast, and coffee, delivered at 8:23 sevens. His investors had already been waiting 23 minutes. That evening, I found him eating cereal for dinner. The Wagyu had gone bad. He didn't know it needed to be used within 2 days of purchase. $400 of groceries, I said. And you're eating cornflakes? He looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw something crack in his facade. Not enough to matter, but enough to know the war was working. He set down his spoon, the cornflakes going soggy in the milk. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he pushed back from the table and walked to his office without a word, leaving his bowl right there on the counter. His side of the counter, technically, but still, old habits die hard. I cleaned up his mess anyway, because seeing dirty dishes bothered me more than making a point. That's when I noticed his credit card statement on the counter, partially hidden under his abandoned Wall Street journal. He'd been reviewing expenses, probably trying to figure out where all his money was going now that he was buying $40 honey and truffle salt he couldn't pronounce. One line item caught my eye. MGM Consulting, $3,000. The same charge appeared every month, going back 6 months. $3,000 monthly to a consulting firm I'd never heard of, while he'd been telling me we needed to tighten our belts due to market volatility. I photographed the statement and went to my laptop. The address for MGM Consulting wasn't a business complex or corporate building. It was the Meridian, a luxury apartment building downtown where studios started at $4,000 a month. My forensic accounting instincts kicked in hard. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about truth. I pulled up corporation records, business registrations, tax filings. MGM Consulting LLC had been registered 7 months ago. The managing member, Madison Grace Mitchell. Madison. His executive assistant, 28 years old, Harvard MBA, legs for days, and a habit of texting Cole about urgent matters at inappropriate hours. I dug deeper. The LLC had a website. If you could call 3 blog posts about manifesting your best life through strategic thinking, a website. The last post was 4 months old. Some consulting firm. That's when everything clicked. The late nights at the office. The weekend emergency meetings. The way he'd suddenly become protective of his phone, keeping it face down during dinner, taking it into the bathroom during showers. I was building a new spreadsheet. Suspicious financial activity? When the universe decided to hand me a gift. It was Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. According to my laptop clock, Cole was in the shower, his phone charging on his nightstand. The water was running full blast. He'd figured out how to override my hot water restrictions by showering at night. His phone lit up. A text notification. I shouldn't have looked, but then again, he shouldn't have been funding his assistant's apartment while making me document every cent I spent on groceries. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. From Madison Mitchell. The water was still running. I grabbed my phone and photographed his screen, making sure the timestamp was visible. Then I opened my evidence folder. Yes, I had an evidence folder now, and filed it under Exhibit A, Emotional Asset Misappropriation. The shower stopped. I quickly returned to my side of the bed, pretending to read on my Kindle. Cole came out in his Turkish cotton robe, the one I'd bought him for Christmas last year when I still believed we had a marriage worth saving. "Who texted?" I asked casually. He glanced at his phone, and I watched his face change. Just a flash of panic before the mask slipped back on. Just a work thing. Singapore markets. Singapore markets at midnight? Sending heart emojis? "Busy day tomorrow," I said, turning a page I hadn't read. "The usual. Some meetings." He climbed into bed, careful to stay on his side of the invisible line we'd drawn down the middle. Why? Just wondering. He was asleep within minutes, snoring softly. I lay there in the dark, planning my next moves. Madison wanted to see him tomorrow? Fine. Maybe I'd do some seeing of my own. Wednesday morning, Cole left early, mumbling something about breakfast with clients. I waited until his Tesla disappeared into traffic, then called in a favor from Janet, my former colleague at Hartman, who now worked in the same building as Cole's firm. "I need to borrow your visitor pass," I said. "Pamela, what are you planning?" "Research." She sighed. "Second floor cafe, 20 minutes." The building's lobby was all marble and glass, trying so hard to scream success that it felt desperate. Janet met me at the cafe, sliding her visitor pass across the table. "15th floor is Cole's firm," she said. "But you didn't get this from me." "Get what?" I smiled, pocketing the pass. I didn't go to the 15th floor. I went to the parking garage and waited. Cole's Tesla had a reserved spot, P47, right next to P48, which belonged to a familiar white BMW with vanity plates. 28 Madison 28. Subtle. At 12:15, they emerged from the elevator together. Cole's hand on her lower back, guiding her toward her car, the kind of casual intimacy that comes from practice. They were laughing about something, her head tilted back, his face more animated than I'd seen in months. I took photos. Then I followed them. They went to Brevaire, a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign. The kind of place Cole used to take clients he was trying to impress. Now, apparently, it was where he took his assistant for meetings. I was sitting in my car, reviewing the photos, when someone tapped on my window. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Victoria Ashton stood there in her St. John suit and pearls, looking like old money and new judgment combined. Cole's mother, my mother-in-law. The woman who'd never quite approved of me but had been too polite to say so directly. I rolled down the window. "Following my son?" she asked, but there was no accusation in her voice. Just curiosity. "Victoria, I can explain." Sevens. "No need." She opened my passenger door and slid in, bringing with her a cloud of Chanel No. 5. I was at Brevaire myself. Library Foundation lunch. Imagine my surprise seeing Cole with his assistant. We sat in silence for a moment. "I know about Madison, dear," Victoria said finally. "Have known for months." My stomach dropped. "Why didn't you tell me?" She turned to look at me directly. "Because Cole's father had his own Madison once. Her name was Jennifer. 26, marketing coordinator. Thought she was in love." Victoria's smile was sharp as winter. "I handled it differently than you're handling this." "What did you do?" "I stayed quiet. Played the perfect wife. Let him have his fun." She adjusted her pearl necklace. "Then Jennifer got pregnant. William paid her to disappear, but the damage was done. The board found out. His reputation never recovered. I'm sorry, Victoria. Don't be. I got everything in the end. The houses, the investments, the company shares. She studied me with new interest. But your way, all this documentation, the contracts, the digital warfare Emma told me about. Emma talked to you? She called yesterday, worried about you. But I told her not to be. Victoria smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it reached her eyes. Your way might be more effective, certainly more interesting. She opened her purse and pulled out a flash drive. What's this? Security footage from the Ashton building. 6 months worth. Amazing how often Madison had to work late. How often Cole had to supervise. She pressed it into my hand. Call it a wedding gift. 8 years delayed. I stared at the flash drive in my hand. This small piece of plastic that felt heavier than my wedding ring ever had. Why are you helping me? I asked. Because, she said, checking her Cartier watch. Cole is making the same mistakes his father made, but with less style and even less discretion. At least William had the sense to be subtle. She opened her door, then paused. I'm coming for tea tomorrow. Have Earl Grey ready. She left me sitting there, holding evidence I hadn't even asked for, from a woman who'd spent 8 years making me feel like an interloper in her son's life. Thursday afternoon, Victoria arrived precisely at 2, wearing a different saint. John's suit, but the same expression of mild disappointment she'd perfected over decades of charity boards and country club politics. Cole was at the office, or wherever he actually spent his afternoons now. Earl Grey? I asked, already knowing the answer. Please. I went to the kitchen and returned with my laminated price list, the one I'd created after Cole's 50-50 declaration. That'll be $12. Includes preparation, service, and cleanup. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. She opened her Hermes wallet, not the everyday one, but the special occasion piece that probably cost more than my car, and counted out exactly $12 in singles. Her manicured fingers trembled slightly, not with rage as I'd expected, but with what looked like suppressed laughter. $12, she said, placing the bills on the coffee table. For tea. Cole's policy. I'm just following the rules he established. Indeed. She maintained eye contact with an intensity that could freeze champagne. Make the tea, dear. We need to talk. When I returned with the Earl Grey, properly steeped, china cup, the whole ceremony she'd trained me in, Victoria had spread documents across my coffee table. Old documents, yellowed at the edges, some handwritten in fountain pen. 1987, she said, lifting a credit card statement. William started his own restructuring of our marriage. Said I'd become too dependent, too comfortable. Sound familiar? I sat down, careful not to disturb the papers. The statement showed charges to hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, none of them for Victoria. Jennifer, Victoria continued, was 26, marketing coordinator at his firm. Blonde, ambitious, thought she was special. She sipped her $12 tea. They always think they're special. How did you find out? Credit card statements first, then private investigator. This was before cell phones, dear. Following people required actual skill. She pulled out a manila folder thick with photographs and reports. Cost me $5,000, but worth every penny. The photos were grainy, but clear enough. William Ashton, looking exactly like an older version of Cole, with a young woman who could have been Madison's older sister. "What did you do?" I asked. "Nothing. At first. I let him think he was clever. Let him make mistakes. And he did. So many mistakes." She smiled, sharp as winter moonlight. "Then I started moving money." Moving money? William thought he controlled our finances. He was the businessman, after all. But I'd been managing my father's estate since I was 21. I knew more about offshore accounts and asset protection than William ever bothered to learn. She pulled out another document. By the time he asked for a divorce, I'd already moved 70% of our liquid assets into trusts he didn't know existed. That's brilliant. Vindictive. Necessary. Victoria shrugged. "It was survival. But you're doing something different. Something smarter." She pulled out a thick legal document, pages tagged with colored tabs. "This is William's prenuptial agreement template, the one Cole used for yours, with modifications." I took the document, scanning through familiar language until she pointed to a specific section. Section 17B. William insisted on this. Financial deception affecting marital assets. He thought it would protect him if I ever hid money. Her laugh was bitter. Instead, it became his downfall. Jennifer got pregnant. He paid her to disappear. That payment constituted financial deception affecting marital assets. And Cole kept this clause? Modified it. Expanded it. Made it even more comprehensive. Victoria turned to the marked page. "Any undisclosed financial transaction over $5,000 that affects marital assets or stability can trigger immediate forfeiture of claims. 30,000 to Madison over 6 months? All documented." "Victoria, this is sevens. Your ammunition. Use it wisely." She stood, gathering specific documents while leaving others. "Keep these. The originals are in my safe deposit box if you need them for court." "Why are you really doing this?" She paused at the door. "Because I spent 30 years pretending my marriage was perfect while William humiliated me with younger women. You're not pretending. You're fighting. And frankly," she smiled again, that sharp winter smile, "it's about time someone in this family fought back properly." After she left, I went to Cole's home gym, his sacred space where he pretended to work out while actually taking conference calls. "Check everywhere," Victoria's words echoed. His gym bag sat in the corner, the expensive leather one I'd given him last birthday. I emptied it methodically. Protein powder, earbuds, spare clothes, and there, tucked in an inside pocket, a small digital recorder. My hands shook as I played it back. Cole's voice, clear and confident. "She's been unstable since the layoff. Crying constantly, not sleeping, making these bizarre accusations about affairs. Then Madison. We need to be careful. If she finds out about the payments, sevens, she won't. She's too emotional to think clearly. Classic depression. My lawyer says if we can document mental instability, the prenup becomes irrelevant." "How long before you can file?" "Few more weeks. Let her keep playing with her spreadsheets and locks. The more erratic she acts, the better for us." Madison laughed, tinkling and false. "Poor thing. She really has no idea." "None," Cole agreed. "By the time she figures it out, I'll have everything lined up. Clean break, minimal settlement, and we can finally stop hiding. The recording continued for another 40 minutes. Plans within plans. Lies within lies. They'd been strategizing my breakdown while I'd been fighting for my marriage. I sat on his workout bench, recorder in hand, feeling something shift inside me. Not breaking, hardening. Like coal under pressure becoming diamond. I copied the files to 3 different drives, uploaded them to the cloud, and emailed them to Patricia Nakamura, the lawyer I'd hired yesterday, who specialized in high-worth divorces and had a reputation for destroying prenups. Then I put the recorder back exactly where I'd found it. Let Cole think I was still in the dark. Still playing with spreadsheets while he planned my demolition. That evening, I called Patricia Nakamura from my car, parked outside a Starbucks where the Wi-Fi was free and Cole couldn't monitor my calls. I need to see you tomorrow, I said. Can you recommend a forensic accountant? I work with someone, Patricia replied, her voice professional but warm. Kiko Tanaka. She's expensive, but she finds everything. How expensive? 5,000 retainer each. 10,000 total. My entire severance package, minus what I'd already spent on groceries and gas. Cole thought I was using it for the therapy he'd been suggesting. You seem stressed, Pamela. Maybe you should talk to someone about your adjustment issues. Book them both, I said. Tomorrow, if possible. The law offices of Winters and Associates occupied a corner suite in a building that screamed old money and older secrets. Rachel Winters herself met me in the lobby, 60-something, silver hair in a power bob, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Patricia says you have an interesting case, she said, leading me to a conference room where Patricia Nakamura waited with another woman, Kiko Tanaka, I assumed. I spread everything on the table. The contracts, the flash drive from Victoria, the recordings, the financial documents, my own detailed spreadsheets tracking 8 years of uncompensated labor. Rachel whistled low. He actually signed this 50-50 agreement? His idea? Had his lawyer draft it? And these recordings? Found them yesterday. He's been planning to claim I'm mentally unstable. Kiko was already deep in the financial statements, her fingers flying across her calculator. These MGM consulting payments, they're just the beginning. Look here. She pointed to a series of transfers. He's been moving money for 2 years. Cayman accounts, Swiss numbered accounts. Not illegal, but definitely violates any reasonable interpretation of financial transparency in a marriage. Can you trace it all? Give me a week, Kiko said. Maybe less. Patricia pulled up Cole's firm website on her laptop. Ashton Capital, his father's company. Cole's a senior partner now, I said. And Madison Mitchell is listed as executive strategic consultant, Patricia noted. Interesting title for someone with 3 blog posts about manifestation. Rachel leaned back in her chair, a predatory smile spreading across her face. The prenup has a financial deception clause. Section 17B. Any undisclosed financial transaction over $5,000 that affects marital assets triggers forfeiture. 30,000 to Madison so far, I said. Plus whatever Kiko finds in those offshore accounts. Rachel's smile widened. Your husband just handed us a gift. We spent 3 hours building the strategy. Kiko would trace every penny. Patricia would document the pattern of deception. Rachel would prepare the filing that would destroy Cole's carefully constructed exit plan. "One more thing," Rachel said as we finished. "Document everything from now on. Every conversation, every transaction, every time he breathes wrong. And Pamela, be careful. Cornered animals get dangerous." Saturday morning, Cole left for Boston. "A weekend conference," he claimed, though I'd seen the hotel confirmation email on his phone. The Ritz-Carlton. 2 rooms booked. MGM Consulting must need extensive strategic consultation. An hour after his Tesla disappeared, the doorbell rang. Madison Mitchell stood in my hallway, all 5'9" of her, wearing designer jeans and confidence like armor. "I need to get some work files from Cole's office," she said, already stepping forward like she owned the place. "He's in Boston," I said, not moving from the doorway. "I know. He gave me permission to..." "Sevens." "No." She blinked, clearly not used to being refused. "Excuse me?" "No, you can't come in. If Cole wants to give you files, he can do it himself. At the office, during business hours." Her perfectly glossed lips tightened. "You don't understand. These are important documents for Monday's meeting." Then Cole should have remembered them. I started to close the door. She put her hand against it, forcing it open. "Look, I don't think you understand the situation here." I pulled out my phone, already recording. "Explain it to me." Maybe it was my calm tone, or maybe she was just that confident. But Madison stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper that my phone still caught perfectly. "Cole promised me this place would be mine soon. So maybe you should start packing now. Save yourself the embarrassment later." "How soon?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Few weeks, maybe less. Depends how quickly his lawyer can prove you're unfit." She smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "The crying, the paranoid behavior with the locks and contracts, it's all documented. Mental instability due to job loss. Classic case." "Is that what Cole told you?" "It's what everyone can see." She stepped back, satisfied with her threat. "I'll tell Cole you were uncooperative." Again. I let her get to the elevator before calling out. "Madison?" She turned, one eyebrow raised. "Check your email." I sent the cease and desist letter Rachel had prepared while Madison was still in the elevator. Legal notice to stop harassment, stop attempting unauthorized entry to my residence, and stop interfering with my marriage. Copy to Cole's firm's HR department. Copy to their legal team. My phone buzzed immediately. "Cole, from Boston. What did you just do?" I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded Kiko's preliminary findings to Patricia. Cole had been billing Ashton Capital for Madison's consulting fees while she provided no actual services. The invoices were fake, the work non-existent. Not enough for criminal charges, Cole was too smart for that, but enough to trigger an internal investigation. Sunday evening, while Cole was still in Boston, I compiled everything into a single encrypted folder. Financial records showing 2 years of hidden transfers. Recording of him planning to claim mental instability. Madison's confession about taking the apartment. Victoria's evidence of the pattern, father and son, same playbook, 30 years apart. The investigation had revealed one final detail that even surprised Kiko. Cole had taken out a $2 million life insurance policy on me 6 months ago. I was unemployed, supposedly unstable, and worth more dead than divorced. Rachel called that evening. "We file tomorrow. Be ready." I sat in my divided living room, my warm lights glowing against his cold blue ones, and thought about the woman I'd been 8 years ago. The one who'd signed that prenup, thinking it would never matter because our love was real. The one who'd made his coffee every morning because taking care of him felt like love. That woman was gone. In her place sat someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who'd learned that when your husband treats marriage like a hostile takeover, you better be ready to fight like a corporate raider. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Monday morning. Rachel's text. Filed. Game on. I didn't sleep after that. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, watching the sunrise paint Lake Michigan gold, while reviewing my notes for tonight, the quarterly partners' dinner at Ashton Capital. The one event where spouses were not just invited, but expected. Cole had forgotten to remove me from the guest list. By the time Cole stumbled into the kitchen at 7, I was already dressed. Not for war, but for victory. The black Valentino dress I'd bought myself after my last promotion at Hartman. The one Cole said made me look too powerful for social events. Coffee's not working again, he muttered, jabbing at his machine. Try reading the manual, I suggested, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. I hear self-sufficiency builds character. He glared at me, then noticed the dress. Where are you going? Work meeting, I lied smoothly. Potential consulting opportunity. He grunted, still fighting with the coffee maker. That's when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said. But Cole was already at the door, probably expecting Madison with his morning files. Instead, a process server stood there, looking bored and official. Cole Ashton? Yes. Sevens. You've been served. The man handed Cole a thick envelope and walked away without another word. Cole tore it open right there in the doorway, still in his robe, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally rage. You're divorcing me? He held up the papers like evidence of my betrayal. You wanted a business dissolution, I said, adjusting my earrings. I'm giving you one. He flipped through the pages, his face getting paler with each section. 347, you're insane. That's just the retroactive compensation. Wait till you see the penalties for financial deception. Page 47. If you're curious. His hands actually shook as he found the page detailing the MGM consulting payments, the offshore accounts, the life insurance policy he'd taken out on me. How did you... Sevens. Forensic accounting was my specialty. Remember? Or did you forget everything about my career the moment I lost my job? His phone started ringing, then pinging, then buzzing with the intensity of a swarm of angry bees. Word was already spreading. That evening, I arrived at the Palmer House's grand ballroom 20 minutes after cocktails started. The Ashton Capital quarterly dinner was in full swing. 50 partners and their spouses, pretending to enjoy each other's company while calculating each other's net worth. I found Richard Ashton, the managing partner and Cole's cousin, standing near the bar with his wife. Richard had inherited his father's position and his grandfather's nose for scandal. Pamela, he said, clearly surprised. We didn't think... Sevens. You'd miss it? I said, pulling an envelope from my clutch. Actually, Richard, could we speak privately? It's about Cole. His wife excused herself immediately, the kind of woman who knew when to disappear. Richard led me to a corner, his expression already weary. This is about the divorce papers. This is about embezzlement, I corrected, handing him the envelope. MGM Consulting. $3,000 monthly for 6 months. Fake invoices. No services rendered. The consultant in question is better known for other services she provides to Cole. Richard opened the envelope, his face hardening as he read Kiko's forensic analysis, the fake invoices, the evidence that Madison had never provided any actual consulting work. This could destroy the firm's reputation, he said quietly. Only if it becomes public, I agreed, which depends entirely on how the partners handle it. Across the room, Cole had just arrived with Madison on his arm. Bold move, bringing his mistress to a partner's dinner while still technically married. Several wives noticed immediately, their whispers spreading like wildfire. Richard looked from the papers to Cole to me. What are you asking for? Nothing from the firm. This is between you and your partner. I just thought you should know where company funds were going. I walked away, leaving Richard holding evidence that would trigger an emergency partners meeting within hours. But first, I had one more performance to give. Cole found me at the dessert table, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. Madison hung back, suddenly less confident in a room full of wives who knew exactly what she was. You're destroying everything, he hissed. I'm documenting everything, I corrected, loud enough for nearby partners to hear. There's a difference. This is my father's firm. Sevens. Was. Victoria's voice cut through the air like ice. She stood in the doorway, magnificent in Chanel, flanked by a man in a suit that screamed legal counsel. It was your father's firm before you dishonored his memory with your sloppy affair and sloppier embezzlement. The room went silent. Madison actually stepped behind Cole, like he could shield her from Victoria's Arctic presence. Mother, Cole started. I'm here in my capacity as trustee of the Ashton Family Trust, Victoria continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom, to inform you that, effective immediately, you're removed from the board for conduct unbecoming an Ashton. You can't. Sevens, I can. I have. She turned to Richard. I believe you have an announcement as well? Richard cleared his throat. The partners will be meeting tomorrow to discuss Cole's position at the firm. Until then, he's suspended pending investigation of financial irregularities. Cole's phone exploded with notifications, email after email from colleagues, clients, connections, all distancing themselves from his radioactive reputation. He stood there in his designer suit, holding his dying career in his hand, while his mistress edged toward the exit. Your father would be appalled, Victoria said, and her voice carried a lifetime of disappointment. Not at the affair, God knows William had plenty, but at how poorly you executed it. Fake invoices? Really? At least your father's mistresses could type. Madison fled, actually ran from the ballroom in her designer heels, leaving Cole standing alone in a room full of people who'd known him since childhood. All of them now seeing him for exactly what he was. I picked up my clutch and walked past him, pausing just long enough to whisper, "Check your email." The message from my lawyer was simple. Settlement conference scheduled for Thursday. Bring your checkbook. The managing partner's email to all partners arrived while I was in the elevator. Emergency meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Mandatory attendance. By the time I reached the lobby, Cole's career at his father's firm was over. 8 years of marriage destroyed by his own greed. A lifetime of reputation demolished by his own deception. The elevator doors closed on my old life, and I walked out of the Palmer House into the Chicago night, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Free. 6 months after the divorce, Victoria invited me to her annual charity gala, the Ashton Foundation's fundraiser for women's financial literacy. Ironic, considering the Ashton men's history with financial deception. I wore red, bold, unapologetic red, and arrived alone. The ballroom was full of familiar faces. People who'd watched my marriage implode, who'd whispered about the scandal, who'd chosen sides. "Pamela," Victoria called out, and for the first time, her voice held genuine warmth. "Come, I want you to meet someone." She introduced me to 3 women, all going through similar situations, all needing help. By the time dinner was served, I had 5 new clients. That's when I saw him. Cole, standing by the bar, looking like a ghost of his former self. Thinner, older, wearing a suit that had seen better days. He was working at Morrison & Associates now, a small firm that handled personal injury cases. Madison was nowhere to be seen. He approached slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal. "Pamela." He paused, searching for words. "You look happy." "I am." He stared at his drink, swirling the ice. "I understand now. What I did. How I treated you. I understand. I could have been cruel. Could have twisted the knife, reminded him of every humiliation, every betrayal. Instead, I said simply, understanding and experiencing are different educations." He nodded, started to walk away, then turned back. "The firm you started. Equal means everything. It's good work." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." Victoria appeared at my elbow as Cole disappeared into the crowd. "They're about to announce the Community Impact Award," she said, guiding me toward the stage. "The Ashton Foundation is proud to present this year's Community Impact Award to Pamela Torres," the announcer said, using my maiden name that I'd reclaimed, "for her work with Equal Means Everything, providing pro bono financial abuse consulting to women in need." I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, some friendly, some curious, some calculating their own marriage's values. Victoria stood in the front row, and when she smiled at me, she mouthed a single word: "Daughter." "Financial abuse doesn't always look like control," I said into the microphone. "Sometimes it looks like equality. Sometimes it's disguised as fairness. Sometimes it comes with a spreadsheet and a laminated contract." The room was silent. "Equal means everything," I continued. "Not equal division, but equal worth. Equal respect. Equal partnership. That's what we help women find. Not just their financial freedom, but their understanding that they deserve both love and respect, not one or the other." The applause was genuine, warm, real. As I walked back to my table, award in hand, I caught a glimpse of myself in the ballroom mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the one who'd signed that contract with Cole's expensive pen. She wasn't the one who'd made his coffee every morning for 8 years. She was someone entirely new. Someone who'd learned that the best revenge isn't destroying someone else. It's building something better from the ashes they left behind. My phone buzzed. Another inquiry through my website. Another woman needing help. Another chance to turn someone's 50-50 nightmare into a new beginning. I smiled, thinking about Cole in his small apartment, probably eating takeout from containers, finally experiencing the self-sufficiency he'd preached. Me? I was experiencing something better. Freedom. If this story of calculated justice had you glued to your screen, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Pamela charged Victoria $12 for tea service, watching Cole's mother count out exact change with trembling fingers, not from rage, but from suppressed laughter at the poetic justice. What was your favorite moment? Was it the smart home warfare? The grocery store surveillance? Madison's karmic dating disaster? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Because every woman deserves to know her worth isn't measured in spreadsheets, but in the strength she finds when she finally says, enough. Thank you for watching, and remember, equal means everything.